Hello and welcome into Addison the 35th podcast, your Chicago baseball authority, brought to you by the great folks at the Just Baseball Media Group. My name is Herb Lawrence. I am your host. Ryan Herrera is our other host. He covers the Cubs on this channel. If you've never listened to it before, I cover the White Sox. Ryan Herrera covers the Cubs. This is the Chicago Baseball Podcast. But you've heard me talk about the White Sox ad nauseum, how bad they're going to be this year. I've already talked to the folks from Detroit about the Tigers. And now, and yesterday I talked to folks from Cleveland about the Guardians. Today, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins. I know as White Sox fans, we don't like the Minnesota Twins. The Piranhas, as I put in the headline there. Ozzie Guillen's nickname for the guys out there, and that just gave the White Sox fits up there at the Hump Dome. But today we're going to talk to Brandon Warne. He is the co-host of the Locked On Twins podcast with our good friend Dave Brown, and also a writer at Puckett's Pond, talking about the Twins. And Brandon, we really appreciate you coming on today. It is a pleasure to have you on. I'm glad you got some time for me today.
Yeah, no, I was happy to do it because it's an exciting time of year. Baseball is about to be back, and everyone's got at least a little bit of hope. It may not last for long, but everyone's at least got some excitement, which I think is my favorite part of the start of the baseball season.
Everyone but us. So that's why I'm talking to people with actual hope, so I can feel a little bit better about my sport. I hope ends on Thursday afternoon when the Angels go up 5-0 versus the White Sox. But we're not here for that. We're here to talk about the Minnesota Twins, a team that I think year over year you get a maximum effort from them, and mostly it's because of the manager. But we'll get to Rocco Baldelli in a second. Firstly, this offseason had to be a terrible, kind of disappointing offseason for the Twins. A lot of stuff with their RSNs that happened the last couple years, and now the Pohlads wanted to sell back in the offseason. They had a buyer in the Ishbias, Justin Ishbia being at the top of that, and then you saw Justin Ishbia kind of do a 180 there and try to buy some minority stocks with the White Sox. So, as a Minnesota Twins fan and writer, how has this been, and where is Justin Ishbia as far as public enemy?
It's the funny thing is that even him backing out or stepping away, I don't want to give any sort of like negative connotation because, it's his money. He can do with it as he pleases. But the bar to clear for a good owner in Minnesota to succeed the Pohlad family is very low. And I'm sure you can relate too, where if the new one comes in and just does whatever they say they're going to, make some modest promises and live up to it, that would be a huge boon for PR and for morale around the market. And so I don't want to say that like Twins fans are upset at him. And honestly, if you think about the logistics of it, Chicago always made more sense. It just wasn't an opportunity until it was. But I think it was more along the lines of just, here we go again, got our hearts set on something, got our hopes up for something, and it fell through. And now it's just this kind of, well, what's next? How's the other shoe going to drop? And this ownership group is the reason why they dropped payroll last offseason, and then this offseason made modest, decent additions, but nothing too exciting to a team that was pretty good last year until it faded down the stretch in September. So it's a very confusing time. It's a very conflicting time to be in the Twins sphere, so to speak. But it's a team that should be in a good place to contend for the division. It all comes down to health, but talent-wise, they're right there. And so nobody's really sure if they should buy hope, sell hope, or just kind of wait and see. And that's what makes Thursday, I think, all the more exciting is the anxiety, like the actual legit anxiety of what's next. Does the team play well? Does the team get sold? Does the team this? Does the team that? There's a lot of things in play that are going to be interesting, as well as the new TV network. You mentioned that too, the new RSN. I'm actually working on those broadcasts as a statistician. So it's a lot of stuff going on around here that is curious, to say the least.
As an observer from the outside, I marvel at what Rocco Baldelli's done up there for the Twins. I think 6 seasons, he got 3 division titles up there, got them their first playoff series win for since 91 or no 2003. My bad. I'm not trying to get you way back
It's
there.
felt like that though.
Yeah, it has felt like a long time, but like, how are Twins fans handling Rocco Baldelli? I mean, the collapse at the end of the last year, I don't know if they give him majority of the blame, or was it just like all the injuries that you guys had and everybody just kind of wearing out when September hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. And Twins fans are very polarized on him because he is a contemporary manager, a follow the splits, follow the handedness, follow the stats, follow the data. And what fans who have spent the last 20 plus years watching Tom Kelly, Ron Gardenhire, and even to some extent Paul Molitor don't realize is that, like, just because you play the percentages based on the data doesn't mean it's going to work every single time. You can't just run a pinch hitter out there, go right on left, and it's guaranteed that you push the right buttons. And so the concept of this makes your odds better as opposed to this makes something certain to happen seems to be lost on a lot of casual fans who are so used to, oh yeah, the number 2 batter can handle the bat, hit and run, bunt, that sort of thing. The very safe managerial decisions, stolen bases and save your closer for the 9th inning. And fans, when they win, insist that it's all in spite of him. But he makes decisions based on the information readily available to him. And it feels as though the players have kind of let him down in that respect. Now, they've let him down in terms of execution, but also just in terms of staying healthy. And I don't think of that as like a character flaw. It's just when you build a roster and you set up a lineup, you do it with certain expectations of guys being available, and that hasn't happened. So there's been a disconnect at a couple different places. And in true fan fashion, not necessarily just Twins, like they'll lash out, they'll get upset. And a lot of them will believe, if they make a decision that doesn't work, well, you could have just done the opposite. That would have worked for sure. You should have kept Matt Wallner in to face Chris Sale or whatever. And so mostly it's a lot of like a vocal minority of people who don't know what they're mad about, but they just really want to be mad and really want to be loud. And those people hate Rocco Baldelli.
Yeah, I can hear you there because, that when you mess up on somebody that you hate, the vocal minority speak up very loudly. And you just talked about it and you touched on it. We here in Chicago know about injuries. Jhoan Moncada, who's now gone. Tim Anderson, now gone. Eloy Jimenez, now gone. And still, Luis Roberts still on the team, but Alston hurts. I don't need to tell Twins fans about injuries. And the guy who I said is the best player in the AL Central at the start of last year, if he ever stayed healthy, is Royce Lewis. Like, that guy is 25 years old. Every time I see him play, dynamic player, but he can't stay on the field. Same thing kind of with Byron Buxton, even though he played over 100 games last year, but he didn't have Byron Buxton type stats at the end of the year. Like, what is the frustration level? What is it? Like, are they feeling sorry for these guys? Because at the end of their careers here with the White Sox fans hated Jhoan Moncada, Tim Anderson, and Eloy Jimenez. They're not there with Luis Robert because the talent's still there. But where are Twins fans as far as Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton, and they're being often injured?
I mean, it's a long-standing frustration because it just has bled over from the Joe Mauer era. And so you had Kirby Puckett, who never got hurt until the end of his career when he had an eye issue. And you had him out there every single day. Kent Herbeck was another guy out there every single day. And so Twins fans for a generation were spoiled by healthy, very good to star players. And now it's been a stretch of, and you can't really blame them. It's like all their deep down saying is, I want to see more of this guy. I want to see more. It's not the worst thing you could say, but when it becomes like an attack on them personally and that it's a character flaw to get hurt, that's where the logical fallacies come out. And you just get some people who are just by definition negative. And for me, you can be a generally negative about baseball because then you'll be right more often than not. Baseball is a generally negative game. And so to me, you don't have to be this real brilliant person to say everything that's negative and then look like you're right more often than not as an analyst. And so seeing people who just kind of pat themselves on the back as, oh, I bet he's going to get hurt again. Oh, I bet he doesn't play this. Oh, I bet they don't win the World Series. Like those people have just kind of frustrated me to no end. So I kind of seek out more level-headed types of folks. And that's, there's a pretty good group of people who are understanding that, like, yeah, these guys they're doing repetitive motion activities for 200 and some days a year. And some guys are going to get hurt and some guys aren't. And they're not choosing to get hurt. And sometimes a guy plays through an injury and he plays horribly and you wish he hadn't. And it just, there's so many logical fallacies. Like, why won't Byron Buxton play hurt? And then he plays hurt and he plays badly. Why didn't he sit so that they could play somebody else? It just comes down to the fact that baseball is a difficult game. And you're always going to think that something else would work better, because unless you win like the 2001 Mariners, where it's like 3 wins for every loss, you're always going to leave meat on the bone. Like I say every year, there's 5 to 7 games that will break your brain that your team will lose every single year at minimum. And then some years it's 10, some years it's 50. I'm looking at you right now. But there are games like that. And people just don't understand though, like baseball is not meant for that level of overreaction or of that level of scrutiny. So if you can kind of tell by now, like my frustration comes from people who just don't know ball. They don't know how the grind of 162 works. And those are the people that get on my nerves the most, because it's a very difficult game to play. It's a difficult game to analyze. It's a difficult game to understand. And some people are just so sure that all they got to do is be negative, and they're the smartest person in the room all the time, which is such a, I just hate it. I really hate it.
Yeah, I think that type of attitude kind of goes hand in hand, like you saying, with baseball fans, where they're coming to get me with my bad thoughts, apparently. It goes hand in hand, and those people like kind of revel in being right about the team that they're talking about. I mean, I'm way too right about the White Sox because they keep on proving me right. I wish I was in a Minnesota Twins kind of state of mind each year. Like, well, we can battle this year.
The trick too there is, if you're negative all the time, when you're wrong, the team wins, and so people aren't mad enough to call you on when you were wrong. So you basically hedge your bets in a way where you can never be nailed on something, because if you say, oh, there's no way the Twins win this one, and they come back from 3 down in the 9th and walk somebody off, outside of freezing cold takes, maybe posting your tweet or something, you're not going to catch a lot of flack. Whereas if you tell it like it is, or like you see it, you're still going to be wrong a lot, just because it's the nature of the game. Mm-hmm. And people are going to try hammer you for it. And it's just like, you kind of question your sanity. Like, what am I even doing this for if I'm good at this and I'm still only right 50% of the time? I'll get people in June, you ready to admit this season is over? And I'm like, no, no. And it's just part of the game. It's part of it's nice to have people who care enough to ask you that, but it's a death march to 162. And some days it's worse than others.
I got to tell you, Brandon, it is weird to look at that Minnesota Twins lineup without Max Kepler. It is very odd for me, especially since he used to crush the White Sox. That game versus Lucas Giolito when he started off, I think it was 2020, the season, hitting home runs like in his first 2 at-bats, still haunt me to this day. So he's gone. The reincarnation of Carlos Santana, gone from first base, but you bring in a hitter that's had some good years out there in Seattle, and getting out of Seattle is good for Ty France. And I look at the other players, and eventually you'll have Royce Lewis back, and I don't know how long you'll have him back for, but hopefully he stays back and you keep on progressing. And Byron Buxton, I already talked about, he's a murderer of the White Sox. Every time he comes back, I don't care if he is on his last legs versus the White Sox, throw four up, let him go to first base and go against the next guy. I don't understand why they keep on pitching to him. I think he has 22 career home runs versus the White Sox, more than any other team that he's faced. But how about the other people? Edward Julian is becoming one of those White Sox killers. What about the rest of the offense for the Twins? What is going to impress you? Who's going to be the guy this year that's going to be producing the most runs?
Well, I think what people sleep on is the depth of this offense. Even with all these guys hurt, if you go over to Fangraphs roster resource, which is, I mean, it's like a kid in a candy store for me, especially now that I'm trying to eat less sugar. So All 9 in the projected starting lineup have a projected weighted runs created plus of 100 or higher. So you're hitting or facing guys who can hit at every turn. And then you get to the bench, and Mickey Gasper is supposed to be a decent hitter. Harrison Bader can hit lefties. Deshaun Kiersey's interesting. And then you start bringing guys back like Lewis, like Brooks Lee, who was the only player in the initial projected offense that didn't have a 100 weighted runs created plus projection, and it was 97. So, like, they have just a ton of guys who can play. It's just a matter of, are they in supporting roles or are they in starring roles? And last year, the stars, Buxton, Correa, and Lewis, only played a combined like 28 games together. I mean, if you bump that to even 75, they're right in the thick of this division. If they play 100 games together, the Twins frankly run away with the division, because the talent-wise, 1 through 9 in the lineup, 1 through 5 in the rotation, 1 through 8 in the bullpen, they're right there with anybody in the AL. And I say the AL because Garrett Cole's out, so the Yankees are not nearly as good as we thought they were. I'm still not sold on the Red Sox, who are going to pay $300 million to their DH. And the West, I mean, the Astros are not the Astros that we remember. So it's going to be an insanely wild AL, and I think the Twins can be right there because their offense, guys like Jose Miranda, who are not focal points of the offense at large, can be very, very good players. I mean, last year he had like a 760 OPS, and nobody really realizes it because he struggled down the stretch. And everything that they did wrong down the stretch was magnified, and it kind of ignored the fact that this offense was clicking for like 4 months last year. And so, honestly, I keep coming back to like health. I'll talk about talent. If I'm going to talk in absolutes, talent-wise, this team is right there with anybody in the AL. And if you look at the projections, I think 14 of the 15 teams on Fangraphs are projected to win between 76 and 86 games. We don't need to talk about the 15th team if you don't want, but basically, it's like a lottery in the AL this year. You just spin the wheel, and then whoever comes out, that might be the top team. Your odds of picking it are about that good. That's how evenly matched these teams are. But what that comes back to is then the frustration that the Twins didn't go out and get that one piece that maybe could have helped them vault further. Now, where that piece fits in, unclear to me, because like they could use a power hitting outfielder, but I'm not signing Anthony Santander. They could use a starter, but probably not going to sign a big money one. Or, maybe Jack Flaherty would have made some sense. But they have the pieces in place. It's just a shame that they scaled back when they did financially, when things could be there for the taking if they just went out there and did it.
And you were talking about the rotation, like 1 through 5, I would probably put Detroit ahead of them.
Yep.
But in division, probably Kansas City and Minnesota are tied for second there. Yep. I mean, when you got a guy at the top of the rotation with Lopez, and then you got Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan. Don't get me started on that dude. Golly, when I get see him, I'm like, yeah, that's enough. And then Simeon Woods Richardson. I was like, who is this guy? And he pitches well last year. And then a guy I followed back, as I'm a San Diego Padres guy, and when I was there, he was there, and Chris Paddock, the sheriff. If he stays healthy, I mean, he has top rotation stuff, but again, stay healthy. But what do you expect from these people? And I heard you also have big time prospects coming up eventually. So what can the Minnesota Twins expect from that starting rotation? I know you're not just going to be throwing 5 because injuries do happen. So what will be happening this year for the Minnesota Twins starting rotation?
Well, I mean, the bar is pretty low for a decent 5 starter. So if Chris Paddock goes out and gives you like a 4.50 ERA and could somehow throw 120 innings, like that would put you in a pretty good spot. Teams just don't get that from their 5th starter. Whereas, I mean, Simeon Woods Richardson had a nice year last year. It'll be on him to show if he can continue that. But the kids that they really like outside of the 3 top guys and then the 2 that you mentioned, Zebby Matthews, who actually pitched, I don't know when this is going to be released, but he pitched on Tuesday in spring training outing after he was sent out and looked phenomenal. And then David Festa, they call him the Slim Reaper. Again, really, really, really good stuff. Those 2 guys might be, if you were to, you never take your 26 best guys in the organization because it has to do with like oh, maybe you've got a top prospect who's great but isn't ready. They might be in their top 26. Like if you were to put Chris Paddock in the bullpen and drop the bottom reliever and maybe Simeon Woods Richardson gets bumped for Festa and Zebby, they have 7 starters that they trust on any given day to give them, at least a 5 and dive. And then the bullpen, which I know you'll get to, Fangraphs loves their bullpen. And so it's a team that I think people are sleeping on. And it's not because the Twins don't deserve it. They were, I think, 9-18 in September. Like they had everything within their grasp and they fumbled it. And so, yeah, nobody should hand you anything when you do that. But the talent is here for this team to be a very, very, very good baseball team. And the rotation, as little worry about a rotation for the Twins as I've had in quite some time.
And you were talking about the bullpen. The guy that I have nightmares about is that Duran guy. He is just, if we're ranking AL Central people, I do have nightmares about Emmanuel Clase because he might be the best closer in baseball. Probably is. But Duran, like when he comes in the game, I'm like, already we're losing to the Twins. I'm pissed. But now the game is over. So what is the faith in Twins fans in him to continue what he's been doing the last 3 years?
Yeah, there was a slight of a little bit of a hiccup last year where I think he was a little less of the best version of himself. And like sometimes that doesn't always bear out in stats, but you'll have a closer who's shaky for 3-4 weeks and it kind of sticks in your brain. And you kind of have to clear that. You'll have a month where a guy's just nails and the numbers then might not look like they would have otherwise. Duran is kind of coming off a season where it was like, well, he was good, but he wasn't the best reliever in their bullpen. Griffin Jacks, for my money and for a lot of people's money, was even nastier and even better. Better command, not as like high octane stuff, but also just way more or way less volatility, I feel like. Whereas Duran, like he gave up a walk-off homer in Tampa. It was either last year or the year before. And that was just kind of the thing where it's like he throws hard, but sometimes a guy just sticks his bat out and hits the ball out of the park. Whereas with Jacks just straight up demoralizes hitters. So like Duran is terrifying, but I think Twins fans actually feel more secure when Jacks is in the game than Duran, to be frank with you.
Is there going to be a closer by committee, or is it just say it's Duran's job?
I think it's Duran's job, but like it does come back to Rocco kind of being non-conventional, where if it's the 8th inning and it's 3-4-5 and you're facing, it's hard to say. I mean, if you're facing the Yankees and you're going to face Aaron Judge, you're going to have one of those guys pitch either the 7th, 8th, or 9th, whatever innings those come up. So he will go unconventional, but at the end of the day, like if the Twins get 40 saves, I'm thinking Duran is like 30 of them, 31 of them. He's going to be the guy like fantasy league guys are going to want to get. But there is some fluidity to that, which can be frustrating for people who want to count those saves. But it's nice to as a manager have 2 guys at the back end that you can trust as co-closers. And they really love Cole Sands, Brock Stewart. If he can get healthy, he's not far off, has been just exceptional when he's been on the mound. And they got a few other guys they really like too. The guy I would tell you to watch out for is Louis Varland.
Yeah.
And he, as a starter, gave up homers left and right, but he's kind of on that Griffin Jacks plan. Jacks was an average starter, below average starter, went to the bullpen, and it was like he took he took a nitro. It was just everything went crazy, velocity and stuff wise. It's kind of like Liam Hendricks, who was a Twin, 10, 12 years ago, and now is you guys saw him up close on how good he was. Sometimes those guys just find that next level, and Varland is, in my opinion, going to be that guy this season.
Yeah, we have his brother Gus in our organization, and last year, he pitched pretty well.
Gus and I missed playing on the same baseball team by 1 year in Minnesota here. I finished playing when I was 29, and he played on the team the next year very briefly until he went and played. I think it was like the Northwoods League or one of those collegiate wood bat leagues. And then he got drafted by, I think, the A's, because he went like A's, Dodgers, Brewers, and then White Sox or something like that. But anyway, so I almost got to play with Gus and then Louis, the younger brother. They're both interesting. I don't think they pitch that much alike, but it's going to be fun to see those two, hopefully, and see a lot of each other in the same games this year because, Louis, he does have an option, so he could move back and forth, but I'm hoping he's going to be a mainstay. And who knows? I mean, at this point, it looks to me like just about anybody could close for the White Sox, and Gus could be in that conversation.
Yeah, and I think as a Chicagoan, and it's the next thing I want to talk to you about, I go to places around here. I kind of have that arrogance about Chicago being the city that it is, and I know that outsiders think that Chicago is a war zone, and so I understand when people have negative connotations about the city that I live in. And I told this to the Detroit and Cleveland people. It's like I went to those places early in my life, and then I've returned to the places, and they're much improved from where I initially thought they were. And I've been to Minnesota many times, and the last time I went, I visited Target Field, wasn't impressed that much, but everybody else I've talked to says I'm crazy. Tell me why I'm crazy about the Twins and Target Field. Firstly, I think I was just a bad walleye on the stick experience, and so that kind of ruined it for me. And also, I already had Twins hatred in my heart, so I didn't really like the city of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Too nice for me. Like Minnesota nice was a real thing. They were just like, "Hey, go ahead, walk across the street." No, you go ahead and cross the street. I was like, I'm a curmudgeon here. I don't like you're being a good person. Now I would actually love going up to Minnesota. I need some of that in my life.
Yeah, it's not like going to an Eagles or a Phillies game where you might get smacked upside the head if you have the wrong shirt on or something. No, it's some of it is there's fan apathy, and it just kind of stretches to like we're not about to browbeat anybody that is cheering for the team that we don't like, but Minneapolis, it gets a rap because there are, like any other city, there's areas where they're just not as safe as others. And everything that people say about Minneapolis is kind of baked into the city experience. No matter where you go, there might be people, on street corners that you just don't want to look in the eye, or you might want to just walk past or whatever. Like how you conduct your business is how you conduct your business. That's not my business, but it's a city just like any other. And it's a ballpark that has some pretty decent sight lines. It's not perfect. Like it would be nice if you could see out a little more, but they've really kind of built up the area around it to where now there's a little ballpark village outside a left field that's got there's actually apartments or condos where some of the players live, like literally one step out, and it's gorgeous. And you can see if you watch a game on the left field side, the train runs out there, and then the high rise actually is, you can see into the stadium from it. And like Austin Martin lived there last year as he was going back and forth between Minneapolis and St. Paul with the Saints. The food is pretty good. I mean, it changes a lot, and I haven't really kept up with it. I know what I loved, like in 2019, like before COVID, they had some really great rib tips, and Pizza Luce is pretty good, and turkey to go, and a whole bunch of stuff. Senior Smokes, Cuban sandwich. Like there's a lot of options. And so one time is probably not a fair grade, but if you get a bad walleye, you get a bad walleye, and that's a fair grade. But I think too, though, it's like, when you have a friend group and you have like maybe friends that are a little uglier than you are to make yourself look better. Mm-hmm. Target Field also has that with the Metrodome. Like anything from the Metrodome was going to be a big step up. Now, with that said, Target Field just has a lot of fun, like little intricacies, like the flags with the standings that they move in order of the AL Central, and they have this kind of shimmering thing that covers the parking ramp that you can see on video games in the right field corner, and they've put like yard games in the right field corner, and they've got a beautiful restaurant, they've got a stadium club team shop, and like it's got everything you need. And they make it better every year. Bigger screens. I don't know. I mean, I think I would say give it, if you've been there once, and I'm not saying you've been there once, but anybody who's been there once and wasn't impressed, give it 2 more times. And if you're not impressed, then I would be surprised.
As a White Sox fan, we are so glad you guys moved out of the hump zone.
Yeah.
That place used to kill us, and especially with Justin Morneau and Joe Mauer hitting the ball off the baggie every damn time. And people like that is like,
Bernard Span
goodness.
hitting the ball on the ground and running for 3 days.
Yeah, Torrey Hunter robbing a home run, and Jhoan
That was
Santana pitching every pitch is a changeup, and like, why can't you hit it? Stop swinging at that ball in the dirt.
There's a legendary Torrey robbery where the guy looks dumbfounded. Is that Carlos Lee? I think
it probably is.
I think because it was like
it was way over the fence. Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah, Caballo was like just staring at him, like, did that just happen? And it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know Target has created some nightmares for us. The Jim Thome home run off of Matt Thornton. Yeah,
I remember watching that on my phone back in it must have been 2010.
Yeah,
I wasn't watching it like as it was happening. I was watching it on like MLB ESPN Gamecast, and I remember seeing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he hit a homer off a lefty. And then I go home and watch it, and it hits the flagpole. And what I think that's the first walk-off in Target Field history, actually. So a little bit of history for White Sox fans and listeners to know that they helped christen Target Field 15 years ago.
And Byron Buxton keeps on hitting walk-off home runs off of the White Sox because we keep on pitching to him for some damn reason. But I digress. And another thing, all of the 4 other teams in the Central, all of them have another professional ballpark right next to them, at least one. Cleveland has the Cavs right next to them. The Tigers have the Lions and the Pistons and Red Wings down the street from them. You guys have the Timberwolves, and of course the Royals have the Chiefs right next to them. We're like in an island on the south side by ourselves. So I definitely am envious of that. And speaking of all the rest of the teams in the AL Central, I'd like to do a thing like the segment's called Why Do You Hate the White Sox? But as we are talking with the AL Central people this week, I like to broaden it out. From least favorite to tolerable, which organization in the AL Central, excluding yours, do you rank from least tolerable to tolerable? Mine, unfortunately, Twins, Royals, Guardians, and Tigers are like 3-4. I don't know why I don't hate them more. I should, but I don't. So I think because those teams are always like so far apart, and no matter what, the Twins always give the White Sox trouble, and the Royals, if they're bad, good, and different, will kill the White Sox. So your rankings, Brandon.
So is this a historical, is it organization plus fan base? Is it like just an
amalgam? The two guys before you have put the White Sox at 4 because of apathy. They're like,
right,
who cares? Which is kind of worse, but I understand. We don't really care about the White Sox because they're nothingness. And that's kind of what the White Sox fans are about, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was a traditional, like, who do you dislike because of what that rivalry has meant?
Yeah, that one.
Then the White Sox would have to be pretty high. If you do a what have you done for me lately, the Guardians have been just excessively frustrating because every other team seems to turn into a minor league team against them. And they have just insane luck against some of these teams. I can say I don't have much ill will for the Tigers, so they'd probably be the bottom of that list. I know AJ Hinch managed the cheating team and whatever, and they made the playoffs last year, but I don't know. I don't have animosity for the Tigers. I don't know. There was a time, 2006, the Twins and Tigers were neck and neck to win the division and make the playoffs. But I would say probably pretty low on them. I'd say the Royals are probably next. Because they were so bad for so long and also beautiful stadium, drivable from Minnesota. No real gripes there, although I will say that their fan base has gotten a little too chirpy for my liking. It's like you didn't do that much last year, and maybe we should realize that success is not always linear. Like some years you're good. Some years you're the chicken. Some years, no, that's not right. Some years you're the lion. Some years you're the steak. So I would say though, like I don't hate the Royals, but like they're getting a little bit too big for their britches. Cleveland right now drives me just insane because like their fan base has like, first of all, the truthers of like the logo, which frustrates me, and then you've got you've literally never won anything in your lifetime, but you're still yapping. And then just the frustration of head-to-head stuff with the Twins. They've been a thorn in the Twins side the last couple years. And so while I would say the White Sox are top of the list, like the whole Torrey Hunter running into Jamie Burke and piranhas and everything from all those years. Like, I think you really, really have to work hard to knock the White Sox off that pedestal. The hatred runs red hot for the Guardians right now. But if you want to take like a 10,000 foot view, I think it's the White Sox by a nose. So it's White Sox, Guardians, Royals, Tigers. But it's like playing Boggle. A year from now, you could shake it up and they'd come out in a different order. I feel pretty confident, though, that it's going to be Chicago or Cleveland at the top for quite a while.
Yeah, I can feel that too. And in that spirit, how are you feeling about the 2025 Twins as far as the AL Central? Not necessarily a prediction, just day or two before the opening day. Like, is it, man, the Twins can really win this thing? Or is it, man, what's going to go wrong? Because I already know that we're going to be fifth place as the White Sox. I don't know the order of what 1 through 4. I can just guess myself, just say the Guardians are going to be the best team in the league. But every other year, the damn Twins just wake up and say, hey, this is our division now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, if they play like they should, that they're going to be right there. But I wouldn't say it's like waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as when does this guy get hurt, when does this pitcher stop pitching well, et cetera, et cetera. It's cautious, guarded optimism with a nod to, Fangraphs has them 42% to win the division and everybody else is lower. Or Baseball Prospectus, I think they're in a good spot. I think you go into the year with hope and a bunch of places that know their stuff saying you've got a pretty good team. Not much more you can ask for. This isn't the era where teams are running away with divisions for a while there in the Central. The Twins for a while in the early aughts, and then the White Sox won the World Series in 2005. Like, it's kind of volleyed back and forth. It's going to be a dogfight. And if you can go into a dogfight feeling like you've got one of the better trained and tougher dogs, if you can stay healthy, you got to feel pretty good.
Appreciate you coming on with me today, Brandon. Tell the folks where they can find you on your socials and where they can hear you or see you on the TV and or the podcast sphere.
I usually tell them not to. At Brandon_Warne or at warren.bsky.social and Locked On Twins wherever you get your podcasts. And then I'll be working on twins.tv doing the hot corner. So if you watch a Twins game and you hear a little jingle and a stat pops up in the corner, I found that stat.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome that Twins have an RSN that's going to be solid for them, because we here in Chicago do not have an RSN.
I think it's going to be something like Chris Komka did for CSN Chicago or whatever it was.
Oh, that's good. That's excellent.
I think it's going to be close to that.
Hope that people shout you out like they did with just Chris Komka too.
I got one on the first one yesterday. Yep, I did. It was pretty cool.
We're out here. Who is it? I don't even know who the
Corey
TV
Probus.
people are. Oh, Corey Probus, former Chicagoan.
It was Glenn Perkins yesterday or Monday, but it'll be Justin Morneau of White Sox fame.
Former White Sox great, yes. Yeah,
White Sox great. Justin Morneau is the regular color commentator. He's phenomenal. Dry as freshly picked sunflower seed, but he's very, very, very good.
Really appreciate you joining us. This is the third of the 4 episodes for the AL Central preview. Tomorrow, we will speak to another gentleman about the Kansas City Royals, and also I will have a solo show talking about the Chicago White Sox and what I expect or don't expect from them in the 2025 season. Thank you for joining us today on Addison to 35th podcast. You can find us all on your podcast platforms. Anywhere you have a podcast, you can find us, and also on the YouTube, you can see our smiling faces, but I like the audio version much better. So check us out there. For Brandon Warne, my name is Herb Lawrence. You can check me out on Ecknerwall23. That's my last name, spelled backwards, Lawrence 23 for Robin Ventura. Until we talk to you tomorrow, peace.